What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp Podcast. I am here with Steve,
Hello.
as always, and today this is going to be our kind of round one, halfway, so to speak, episode. Every series to this point has played at least three, and there's a couple of game fours going on tonight. Similar to last time, we're just going to go over the series and their halfway marks and just kind of give you our thoughts. So we'll just start with the one that's over already. The Florida Panthers getting swept out of round two by the Tampa Bay Lightning by scores of 4-1, 2-1, 5-1, and 2-0. Rip my bracket, first of all. That
Kind of an
sucks.
owie.
That sucks.
I mean, this is what we get for talking dummy shit at the end of round one. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got on the air and we were like, yo, we were right on every single pick in our bracket. And the universe was like, oh, you thought that was funny? Okay. But
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a couple things worth noting in this series. I mean, first of all, obviously the Panthers power play, right? For the playoffs, cumulatively, is clicking at a mean 3.2%, which is
weren't they like 0 for like 90 something coming down the stretch?
I can't remember if that was the Panthers or if that was the Hurricanes, because I know they were also talking about how bad the Hurricanes
I think
power
it might
play
be
has
the
been.
Hurricanes. Yeah, I think you're right. I just remember one team being like absolutely abysmal. But yeah, I think it was the Hurricanes. Sorry.
No, you're good. 3.2% at one point in the playoffs, they were 0 for 22, and then I think they broke that streak, 0 for 23. Um, and the penalty kill not really doing anything for them either. 71.8%, which, quite frankly, against a team like the Lightning, just isn't going to be good enough. Um, and they didn't really score many goals in the playoffs. They were 14th in goals scoring. Um, I watching this series, two things really came to mind. A, obviously the special teams really let them down. You know, a top five power play coming into this series, and in the regular season they were mid tier in the penalty kill, but they were a little bit better than the percentage they had in the playoffs, which is every goal matters, right? And they lost a couple of these games basically entirely off the strength of just not scoring on their power plays and giving Tampa Bay too many opportunities on their power play. Um, and I also think that they got pretty heavily outcoached in a lot of ways. And I mean, look, Andrew Burnett is a new coach. This is his first real run in the playoffs, but and credit to where credit due. The Tampa Bay Lightning played a fantastic series. I said after Game 7 that they were scary because that looked like the back-to-back champions were back, right? Games 1 through 6 against Tampa, or Toronto, they were kind of there, kind of not really there, kind of listless. But Game 7 looked like the Tampa Bay Lightning were back, and Games 1 through 4 in this series looked exactly the same. So credit where credit's due to the Lightning and John Cooper. There's a reason that this guy, for all the nonsense and BS that the Lightning have pulled as an organization, John Cooper is still a fantastic coach. Top five coach in the NHL in my opinion. So I guess there's not really much shame in getting outfoxed in that regard, but in the sense that like you came in and laid a complete egg in round two, and for a team that won the President's Trophy, you didn't even look like you belonged on the ice with the Tampa Bay Lightning in some of these games. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this series?
I mean, it's kind of sad, honestly. Like, for the Panthers, this has to be embarrassing, right? Considering how this was supposed to be like their year, like, and this would be like they're usurping the crown from the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then the Tampa Bay Lightning come and just give them an absolute fucking beat down in 4 games. Like, it was essentially like the Florida Panthers were the new kid on the playground, and they challenged the established bully, and he just fucking just laid into them. Like they just completely outclassed. And it was weird to see too, because like we had talked about it in the first round, how like the Florida Panthers needed to really get their shit together, and like in order to, if they have any chance of getting through the Tampa Bay Lightning. And well, like I guess jokes on us because they didn't. They continued to look like a totally different team than they did in the regular season, and I still don't know why that really was.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there's a major glaring hole on paper that you can really point to and say, okay, here's why. It's not like they were missing depth or missing grit or missing veteran leadership or anything like that, like any of those X factors or even on paper factors. And the one thing we both pointed out when the playoffs were starting was that the one weakness that this team had was that the coaching staff, for the most part, wasn't the most experienced in the playoffs. We both said, like, that's, if anything sinks them, it's going to be that, right? Andrew Burnett, new coach, no playoff experience, no deep playoff runs. And he's going up against some pretty, tenured coaches. Round one, you have to go up against Peter Laviolette. Round two, you end up going against John Cooper, right? And I think that really is a big part of it. I mean, watching those power plays really was very frustrating because when you're 0 for when you hit 0 for like 6 in a series, that's when you're like, all right, we got to change something up. Like it's not working.
Right.
When you hit 0 for 22 and you're still trying to force the play up to the top of the zone, and like I get it, right? You have good defensemen who can really rip the puck and really make some plays, like Aaron Ekblad and company. You have great back end there in Florida that's willing to make plays up top, and you have the guys that are willing to go to the front of the net and get those tips and deflections like Barkov and Bennett. But when it's not working because you're not getting your shots through, you're not spreading out the penalty killers. The Lightning pretty much, and every other, the Lightning and the Capitals were pretty much able to more or less just clog up the middle of that ice. So those shots weren't getting through because they knew that they didn't have to worry about a cross-seam pass because it wasn't happening. And then lo and behold, the only power play goal the Panthers score, they forced the play down low, get it to the bumper, and shoot and score. And then immediately went right back to forcing every play through the top of the zone. That's a coaching thing. That really is. Like, yeah, sure. Could it be the onus a little bit be on the players to be like, all right, guys, like, I know coach wants us to do this, but, like, it's not fucking working, so, like, let's try something new. Sure, but running schemes and setting up things like that, that's the coach's job, and they got outboxed real hard in that regard. And I think that's really what sunk the team, Sure, you can say Barkov and Huberdeau weren't as electric in the playoffs as they were in the regular season. They weren't making as many highlight reel plays and coming up as clutch as they normally were. But the line blender didn't come out until it was too late. They were forcing these same lines through over and over and over again. The line blender didn't come out until it was too late. And then by the time they found some lines that started to click, it was already too late. And the series was basically already over. They were down 3-0. Yeah, it was rough. And it's not even like this was a competitive second round. They came out and got blasted. Like, if you lose a 7-game series to the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, like, all right, respectable. They're the champs for a reason. But, like, dude, you got punked.
Like, why did you even bother winning your first round series if this is what you were going to do in the second round?
I guess my question is, if you have like control of the Florida Panthers, are you making roster changes, coaching changes? Like, how do you think this is going to impact the organization of the Florida Panthers for next season?
I don't think it's really going to impact them all that much. I mean, you just want a President's Trophy, and you got an absolute smackdown from the two-time Stanley Cup champion. I mean, I think if these problems rear their head next season, you probably start to look into it. But I think for now, like, you kind of just want to stand pat and see what happens,
Yeah, I agree. I think you run this team back, try to get as many of these guys back as you possibly can. Maybe, if anything, you can try to make an additional upgrade at your top 6 somewhere up front. Maybe add a little bit of firepower because they didn't score that many goals this playoffs. 14th out of 16 teams isn't great. But I think otherwise you pretty much just run the same core back. And, if it happens again where you're just getting like blown off the ice specifically because your coaching staff can't keep up, then I think after next year you start to really look and be like, all right, we need like true veteran coach behind the bench here, because this team is too good to let waste, and toil on like mediocre coaching. Like by the time Andrew Brunette, if he still struggles next year, gets his act together in the playoffs, you don't want to waste the competitive years of this team doing that. So yeah, and I guess also how does this make you feel about the Tampa Bay Lightning now going to their third consecutive Eastern Conference Finals? Are you more confident than you were at the start of the season or start of the playoffs? Less confident? How do you feel about them?
I mean, I'm still on the fence. I'm not completely convinced on the Tampa Bay Lightning still this year. I mean, they're obviously a good team. I'm not going to take that from them, but I don't know if I mean, they had a tough time in that first round. So, I don't expect that to change when they run into more stiff competition. You know what I mean? And I definitely think a team like the Carolina Hurricanes or the Rangers, I guess, but realistically the Carolina Hurricanes would put up more of a fight than the Florida Panthers looked like they were. I mean, because they are kind of a similar team to the Panthers when you really think about it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing what happens with them in round three. Who comes out on top of the Rangers Carolina series? I I think that it's gonna be hard for whoever has to play the Lightning. Really, I think the issue is like at this point because they've seemed to hit that second gear. Like I said, games 1 through 6, the Lightning looked way different than games 7 through and then games 1 through 4 this series. It looked like those same teams that we were seeing taking teams to to 6 and 7 games and then winning back to back cups and all that. So I don't know. I think do the Hurricanes or Rangers have maybe a better matchup than the Florida Panthers would? I think the Rangers have a different kind of matchup, which could be good. Like you said, the Carolina Hurricanes are fairly similar to the Florida Panthers that build. Um, Not to say that the Carolina Hurricanes also get swept. Obviously, Rod Brindamore is not the same coach as Andrew Brunette, right? Rod Brindamore is one of the best coaches in the NHL. So he wouldn't have those same kind of problems like kind of in the war room, so to speak. I think the Rangers would be interesting just because they'd be a little bit different than the Florida Panthers because they bring, quite frankly, a lot more speed than the Florida Panthers do. Not to say that the Florida Panthers are a slow team, but the Rangers are just like turbo speed. They're probably the second fastest team left in the playoffs behind the Colorado Avalanche, or maybe tied with Edmonton. But yeah, just a different kind of matchup. So it would be interesting, but I think whoever beats the Lightning are gonna have to expose them in the same ways that the Leafs did, and find ways to just make plays happen that force the Lightning to not be able to go into this like lockdown kind of trap system, and also do not let the Lightning get to a clinching game because Andrei Vasilevsky in clinching games is like the greatest goaltender to ever lace up a pair of skates. I think he now has the most shutouts in series clinching games in NHL history, which is like
Sounds about right.
yeah. So when the Lightning are down, when you have as good a first period as the Florida Panthers did against the Lightning, the key takeaway is you have to find ways to score. I don't care what you have to do. The Lightning are never dead until the final buzzer goes. So you cannot assume this team is ever down and out. So yeah, Tampa Bay Lightning off to their third consecutive Eastern Conference Finals. No New York Islanders to meet in the third round this time. They will get a different matchup. So it's interesting to see what happens there. Um, we're going over to the other series in the Eastern Conference. The Carolina Hurricanes currently up 2-1 on the New York Rangers. Carolina is taking both games in Carolina by a score of 2-1 in overtime and 2-0. Rangers coming back with a 3-1 win in the Garden. But every game realistically has been a one-goal game because the second goal in Carolina in Game 2 was an empty netter, and the third goal for the Rangers in their last game was also an empty netter. So really tight series. This feels way more like a second-round matchup than the Panthers and Lightning felt. So we'll go to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on this series so far?
Um, well, it's definitely been more competitive. I mean, way closer. Um, it's just interesting to see two teams that, I mean, I know both teams finished top five in the regular season in goals against average, but they also finished fairly high in goals for per game. So it's interesting to see how that's working, and it's really just become kind of like a defensive slog. I mean, Igor Shesterkin's been the standout like always. He's kept the Rangers in a lot of these games for long stretches. Um, it's, I mean, the Rangers' power play when it's been on the ice has had a tough time. Their penalty kill has been good though. So, I mean, this matchup really has been a defensive battle from, well, one team that is kind of a defensive stalwart in the Carolina Hurricanes, and then another team that like really doesn't look like a defensive stalwart on paper, but for some reason it's having a pretty significant amount of success playing this like tight checking, grinding type of game.
Yeah, it's been very interesting through three games, and this is being recorded ahead of the game four. This probably won't be uploaded until game four is over, but this is being recorded ahead of time for game four. Carolina again, for some reason, just doing the no wins on the road challenge. Can't buy a win on the road. Uh, this has been a really odd series for me to watch because I actually thought the Rangers probably deserved to win games one and two. I thought they were the better team for most of those the most part of those games.
I mean, they were definitely the better team in game one for the first two periods. That third period was absolutely all
Yeah,
Carolina, and then the
yeah.
overtime.
Uh, and then game three, I actually thought the Carolina Hurricanes probably deserved to win. So it's kind of weird because it's like the Rangers probably should be up 2-1 in this series, but it seems like the teams are taking turns like winning games they shouldn't. Uh, but I think that the Rangers have been aggregate over the course of each of the games probably have been slightly better than the Hurricanes, but obviously, ultimately in the playoffs, that doesn't really mean much if you can't actually end up winning the games. So it's interesting. I mean, Igor, like you said, Igor. Not to say that Igor in the first round was bad, but we're not used to seeing him, be pulled two games in a row and give up as many goals. But he's back to being the Igor where like he's making saves he shouldn't, but it's almost like you're not even surprised at this point because you're like, oh yeah, he does that like every single night he's on the ice, which is obviously
Really like his bread and butter.
yeah, which is like incredibly dangerous for the Carolina Hurricanes, right? Uh, but Ronta's been really good too, and the Hurricanes have found a way to claw themselves up to a 2-1 advantage. Obviously, goes without saying, Game 4 pretty pivotal. Um, if the Rangers can win Game 4 here at home, apparently the Hurricanes just refuse to win on the road. So all the Rangers would have to do at that point is just win one of two games at Carolina. Um, I honestly really couldn't tell you who's going to win this series at this point just because it's been so close and like one odd bounce. Like Ian Cole's game winning overtime goal was just a complete fluke, right?
Hit Ryan Lindgren, yeah.
Brendan Smith's shorthanded game winning goal in game two, just one bad defensive breakdown. The Rangers' second goal for Chris Kreider was one Tony DeAngelo deciding to hold his stick with one hand and then instead of get back into play, complain when it gets knocked out of his hand legally because it was stick lifted, not even slashed. So it's like one mistake is making such a big difference in these games that it's really hard to say either way where this series goes. But I think regardless of what happens, even if, let's say for argument's sake, let's say even if the Rangers come out for these next two games and like completely lay an egg, right? I think that this has been a fantastic playoff run for them. I think this has proven a lot of the groundwork that this team is built on is a solid foundation, considering that you're taking a young team like this who a lot of them have some playoff experience, but not that much, and you're giving them a competitive second round against the Hurricanes. I think it's been a fantastic run for them, even if they come out and lose. Now, on the flip side, though, if the Hurricanes come out and lay two complete eggs, this is a failure, right? They're not in the same position that the Rangers are. This is a team that can't be like, oh, we did good in the second round, right? Like, for them, it's really competitive third round. Anything short of that is a complete failure, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, Carolina at this point, I mean, the Rangers are in the same position Carolina was in about 2 years ago, right? When they really started this ascendancy to the top of the league. So, to your point, yeah, Carolina's kind of finally graduated into that like upper echelon of teams that are expected to at least make the conference finals, if not the Stanley Cup finals, right? So for them, it is game 4 is obviously important for both teams, right? Because the Rangers don't want to end up in a 3-1 hole again in the second round. Because I don't think that's a hole they're going to be able to dig themselves out of in the same way they were in round one. Because like Carolina is not the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they are not prone to the same level of breakdowns that the Pittsburgh Penguins are. And let's be honest, for large stretches of those games, in games 1, 2, and when they started to win again, the Rangers absolutely dominated the Pittsburgh Penguins. They don't have the ability to like completely dominate the Carolina Hurricanes because even when the Rangers are playing well, Carolina is still able to give it back to them just as well. So it's been this nice back and forth series, It feels competitive. It feels like, I mean, I was at the edge of my seat for those Pittsburgh games. That was mostly just because like our entire season was on the line. But like these games, I'm on the edge of my seat because it's like this game is actually like exciting and like they've been, you know, tough. They've been tough. They've been down to the wire. They've lived up to the hype. I mean, apparently Tony DeAngelo decided it'd be a good idea to bark at the Rangers bench, and Gerard Gallant told him to shut the fuck up. And now that's like a thing. So who knows what's gonna happen in Game 4 here? I mean, he started his fourth line in Game 3, so let's see if they start again in Game 4. Um, I do want to make a point though about Tony DeAngelo. I'm glad to see that like a lot of the few goals the Rangers have scored that have been the direct result of Tony DeAngelo mistakes. He makes the turnover. I think it's in Game 1 to Philip Hedl to cause the setup for the only Ranger goal actually. And then, Game 3, he, gets his stick launched into the stratosphere and then, absolutely flubs the play and lets Kreider, score the game winner.
Yeah,
So,
well, D'Angelo's a clown. I don't think anybody outside of Carolina really likes that guy.
my biggest problem with Tony DeAngelo, honestly, is that, like, he's the toughest guy on the ice when he knows the guy on the other side can't fight. You know what I mean? Like, he was talking so much shit and he was in every scrum when Ryan Reeves wasn't on the ice. But the second Ryan Reeves got on the ice, Tony DeAngelo couldn't be further from him. He wouldn't go anywhere near him. And like I don't like that just because like if you play that way and you don't take a step back, like you play that way against anybody. You know what I mean? So like to me it's just like a punk thing to do. Like you just look like a bitch, There's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're going out to like start shit and try to hurt people. Not that he's tried to hurt anybody in the series, but just like, based on his reputation, the things he does. It's like, wow, but like, you have to answer the bell for this, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's a baby. He really is. And like we always knew that. Even in New York, he
Oh
had those
yeah.
like baby punk tendencies, but I think it's because like he has an extra chip on his shoulder now because he feels like he has to prove something to everyone. When in reality, I don't care how many goals you score or how many points you put up, you're still a terrible human being. So like, yeah, congrats, you put up like 50 points. I don't care. My argument against Tony DeAngelo has always been you're a garbage person.
Well, it's the same as our Evander Kane argument. You know what I mean? Like, you're just a shithead. Like, I don't care how good of a hockey player you are. I can't support you if you're, in Tony DeAngelo's case, allegedly like a bigot and like hateful, Or in the case of Evander Kane, these aren't alleged. A, you know, I like,
A gambling addicted
yeah,
deadbeat
like a
father.
degenerate gambler, like who thinks it's like okay to like wave a handgun around at somebody in your home, like.
Your wife.
Yeah, like I, you don't want to be in the same conversation as Evander Kane because you know who else is in the same conversation for us as Evander Kane? Guys like Slava Voinov,
Yeah.
um, guys like that. And it's like, do you really like you're never gonna be able to disassociate yourself from that for us. And honestly, I feel like that goes for a lot of the hockey community outside of the media at large because like we're not part of the hockey media. Like let's not kid ourselves, right? Like we're just two guys on a podcast, but outside of like the hockey media, everybody kind of just like universally agrees, like you said, that like Tony DeAngelo is just like an asshole and nobody likes him. Um, So I don't care how much success he had for the Carolina Hurricanes. And listen, I get Rod Brind'Amour sticking up for him and going to bat for him because it's his player. He has to, he is the coach. I mean, I coached at a very low level at one point, and like, yeah, I had to go to bat for a lot of players doing a lot of stupid things that I thought were fucking dumb, you know? But it's just part of the job. Um, so I don't know. That's just like my piece on Tony D'Angelo. I just think it's funny that like the Rangers have directly victimized him on a couple of goals, which is, both poetic justice for us as an organization because it's, justifies us saying like, yeah, you're a shithead, get out of here. But also because like of all the shit he's talked about the Rangers and the way everything happened in New York afterwards.
Yeah. And for ultimately, regardless of, again, how much success he goes on to have or not have or whatever the case is, it doesn't matter to me because my gripe against you, I've always thought he was pretty bad in his own end, even in New York.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I mean he was abysmal.
I remember people were trying to tell me, like, oh, D'Angelo and Fox are the greatest defensive pairing in the NHL. I was like, you're out of your freaking mind, dude.
See, like here's what I'll give Tony D'Angelo about it being in his own end, right? Like he's a competitor. He does go out there and he does give everything he has on whatever end of the ice he's on. That doesn't make him good though. You can try real hard and still be shit at something. Believe me, I know.
Right. So, my gripes with him on the ice are one thing, but regardless of that, completely separately, my gripes against him as a human being aren't going to change. And, even if the Hurricanes go on to win the Stanley Cup this year, I don't really care about Tony D'Angelo more
Getting a cup,
than
yeah.
just unfortunately having to talk about him every now and then. But yeah, the rest of this series is going to be very interesting. Two teams that are in pretty different positions, like I said. One team that honestly to this point has had a fantastic playoff run, pretty much a proof of concept, and pretty much the ignition switch to launch this team into the next 5 to 10 years of competitive viability, and a team that is already in that kind of window, right, with the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll see what happens next two games. Games 4 tonight at Madison Square Garden in about 25 minutes as of recording this. So speaking of hockey people in general, you know.
Such a transition. Speaking of the vague, esoteric idea of hockey, no, but yeah, so I guess like speaking of Evander Kane, right? Like we might as well just segue right into
Calgary and Edmonton having like one of the weirdest series of all time. Calgary winning game 1 9-6, then Edmonton winning game 2 5-3, and then game 3 4-1. Game 4 again is tonight. This has been a very bizarre series. I mean, game 1 pretty much played out how I thought it would, minus the fact that Calgary gave up 6 goals.
I mean, I don't know. That was a wild one, man. That was like an absolute barn burner. I don't think I ever expected to see 14 combined goals.
Well, no, I mean in the sense that I expected Edmonton just to leak, goals
Oh
against
yeah,
the
yeah, of
Calgary
course. No,
Flames.
100%. I mean, yeah, to your point, that's kind of how I saw it too, right? Like I thought Calgary was going to be able to beat up on Edmonton pretty significantly, but
Game 3 notwithstanding, because Mike Smith played a absolutely fantastic game 3. Not going to take anything away from the guy. Played out of his friggin' mind in game 3. This has been a very odd, bizarre series, just in the sense that, like, the LA Kings found ways to slow down the Oilers. Granted, yeah, the Oilers had those 2 back-to-back games where they scored, what was like 8 and then like 6. But the LA Kings found a way to pitch a shutout against this team and drag the Edmonton Oilers to 7 games. We're actually up 3-2 in the series. And it's not necessarily like they were just outscoring Edmonton all the time. It's weird to me that a team like that, no offense to the LA Kings, but a team like the LA Kings can find a way to slow down the Edmonton Oilers. And a team like Calgary just cannot, for the life of them, contain this team. Like, look, I get it, right? You're playing against Connor McDavid. I fully expect Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to combine for 4 points minimum every night, right? A goal and an assist each, right? 4 points minimum combined between those two. Probably closer to 6. But Jesus, like, you are getting torn to shreds by these two guys. And it's not really like the rest of the Oilers are doing anything all that dangerous when you really get down to it. I mean, yeah, Evander Kane's got 10 goals in 10 games. A lot of those came kind of in some garbage time, but Zach Hyman's got 8 points in 10 games, got 6 goals. But then after that, you have guys with like 2 goals, 2 goals, 1 goal, 2 goal, 1 goal, right? So it's like Connor McDavid has 23 points in 10 games. Leon Draisaitl has 19 points in 10 games. Evander Kane has 13, and Zach Hyman has 8. You're telling me you can't find a way to at least contain the damage that these 4 players are doing enough for you to win games against a team that leaks goals as much as the Edmonton Oilers does?
Especially when you did it all season.
Like, I don't know. Am I crazy for thinking that this should not be... Like, okay, look. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are probably the 2 best players in the NHL. I get that. But they have 4 offensive players that are even worth worrying about. And the rest of the team is basically not even like a thought. So how is that a team that's as deep as the Calgary Flames, with as good a defense as the Calgary Flames, can't find a way to at least limit the damage they can do enough for them to win games?
At least limit it to only 4 points between the 2 players a night, And not Connor McDavid literally single-handedly demolishing your team night after night. I mean, he had, 4 points the other night, and so did Draisaitl. It's like, it was just absolutely unreal. And let's not pretend that like the success that Hyman and Evander Kane are having aren't a direct benefit of, playing with either Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid assisted on all 3 of Evander Kane's goals for that natural hat trick the other night.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Are you seeing something else in the series that maybe is going on outside of that top line? Or is it really just as simple as Calgary has got to find a way? You can't put out the fire that is that top line, but at least find a way to contain it. Or is there something else that you're seeing maybe in this series that's going on behind the scenes?
I don't know. I really just think it's Calgary's approach to this. Like they got outshot by almost double in Game 3. That's not a recipe for success. And I know, like you said, it's going to be hard to limit the Edmonton Oilers in shots. They're going to put up a lot of them. But the problem was when you give up 40-something shots and almost half of them are probably really high danger like chances, you're not going to beat the Edmonton Oilers. Like, you're not going to trade chances with the Oilers. So I don't know why Calgary would even try to, because that really was what Game 1 seemed like to me. It was a game where both teams went out there and just laid it all out. Like, hey, we both can score goals. Let's do it. And let's see whoever scores the last goal wins, really. But then to all of a sudden just try to keep playing that way and not be able to produce is so strange, And I thought Calgary was pretty okay in Game 2. I didn't think they were terrible, but I didn't think they were great either. But yeah, Game 3, they just looked awful. Like, they got blown complete. Like, despite the score only being, 5-1, 4-1, it didn't feel like a 5-1 game. Like, it felt very, very much like a blowout. It felt like that was the game that should have ended like 9-1 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Calgary played okay, but Mike Smith really kind of came in clutch a lot in that game. But I understand what you mean by a blowout because it felt like every time the Oilers were getting a good chance, it was in the back of the net. And as opposed to the Flames, where they didn't score until pretty much garbage time. They were already down, I think, 4-0 at that point. So, yeah, I think, it's not going to get any easier tonight in Game 4 because you're in Edmonton, so Edmonton gets the matchups that they want, so they can avoid putting out the McDavid line against your top defensive players. Adjustments that the Flames have to make, I mean, obviously, you have to find a way to put the puck in the back of the net because that's just the bottom line. You got to score goals against the Edmonton Oilers. I know it sucks, and you don't want to trade chances, like you said. That's not what I'm saying, but you have to find a way to put them behind the 8-ball because
you have to put them on their heels.
Right, because they don't defend very well at all. They really don't. Like, you put them in a defensive zone, and a 90-second Connor McDavid shift where he's defending is way less dangerous than a Connor McDavid shift where he's in literally any other part of the rink. Like, keep that man in his defensive zone if you can. And you got to find a way to keep the pressure consistent. And I don't care what it takes, short of taking penalties and, just literally taking a penalty every time McDavid or Draisaitl steps on the ice. Short of doing that, and obviously I'm not advocating for them to like injure anybody either. I'm not stupid. I'm not being like, oh, go take his head off, right? Short of like a crime on the ice, basically, and penalties, you've got to find a way to limit these. The LA Kings pitched a shutout against this team. You can find a way to limit those guys' opportunities. Like, you just, it is what it is. Like, there's nothing you can do. That Edmonton, like LA pitched a shutout, and then in Game 7 only gave up 2 goals. Like, come on, Calgary, And this really feels like a Calgary Flames thing, isn't it? Where like they come into the playoffs every year and just like lay a dud at our feet,
Yeah, and I was actually really excited for the Battle of Alberta this year. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it's been, because it really does feel like it doesn't feel like all that competitive. It feels like Calgary's been pretty listless since the start of it. Since they went out there and just dominated for 9 goals, but like they still gave up 6. But yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be tough for them in Edmonton tonight to try to bottle up that line, especially considering they've been unstoppable to this point. I feel like Connor McDavid's one of those guys that once he's rolling, which is pretty much all the time, he's impossible to stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, we saw, what was it, in Game 3, he went out, scored a goal, it got called back, and like 15 seconds later scored the exact same goal.
Yeah.
And it stood. It was like, okay, yeah. To me, that was like, all right, well, yeah, he's the best player in the world. He literally just said, oh, that didn't count. I'm just going to do that thing again real quick. And he went, took on 4 defenders, got around all 4 of them, put it in the net, and it counted. And it was like, so I understand, like, yeah, how do you stop that? But at the same time, Edmonton did. Not Edmonton, like you said, LA did it. Connor McDavid wasn't regularly going 1-on-4 with the LA Kings and winning. But for some reason, he's having a very easy time, like, victimizing the Calgary Flames defense. And I'm not just pointing my fingers at the 6 defensemen, but like I also mean like defense in terms of like the forwards too, like the forward checkers and back checkers. Like, there's got to be a body or a stick on Connor McDavid pretty much at all times. Like, you cannot let that guy get any room, and it seems like Calgary's content so far to let him skate pretty freely, and they're paying for it. I mean, they're seeing what happens when you let Connor McDavid do whatever the fuck he wants. He just victimizes your team over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. For as close as this series is on paper, 3-goal difference in Game 1, 2-goal difference in Game 2, 3-goal difference in Game 3. I think the big thing is just like, I hate to say this, but it almost feels like McDavid doesn't have to work to do the things that he does, and I know that he does, right? I'm not taking anything away from his skill, but it feels like everything he's doing just works, as opposed to like him getting shut down a couple of times and then he does something magic and you're like, holy crap, what a play. But it's like every time this guy touches the puck, it's in the back of the net. So it feels like the game's pretty much a blowout the minute that he steps on the ice. And
well, because every time he gets close to the net, you're like, well, this is gonna be a goal. It's like, it's not even what's Connor gonna do. It's just like, okay, well, let's see how Connor's gonna put this one in the net. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, against LA, like you said, I felt like he had to do something magical, and he did. I mean, he took over the one, was it early in the series? It was I think it might have been Game 2, where he came out with, like, an absolute vengeance. But, like, to your point, like, he's taking on all 4 defenders on the ice for Calgary that are in the zone, and nobody is stopping him. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And it's happening regularly. He's being able to skate through the neutral zone pretty freely. Like, once he gets those legs going, you're not gonna stop him. He's too fast. He's too smart. Like, you're not gonna be able to hit him short of like taking an absolute vicious run at him. You know what I mean? So it's like, at the very least, you got to put somebody on him so he doesn't get his legs turning like that, you know. And Draisaitl is a little different. Draisaitl is kind of a shooter. You know, a lot of his points come on that power play, which Calgary also has failed to stop. Like when we were watching the other night, you pointed out that Edmonton uses pretty much the same exact play every time to get the goal in the power play, and Calgary has yet to react to it. You know, say what you will about the Rangers power play being pretty one-dimensional with the puck going to either Fox or Panarin, but the way that they're manufacturing their goals in the power play has changed from game to game. You know, some games it's Fox to Zibanejad for the one-timer. Sometimes it's Panarin to Kreider for a tip in front, or you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same exact play, so it's harder to read. If Edmonton were doing something different instead of just going to the bumper for Leon Draisaitl on every goddamn fucking play, I'd be a little more inclined to understand why Calgary's having such a hard time adjusting to this power play. And I mean, yeah, you do have to respect the Connor McDavid factor of the power play, where he is a one-man power play unto himself. You know, he can do it all, but he really shouldn't be able to. You know?
Yeah, I don't. We're not taking anything away from Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. Obviously, we could go on for hours and hours now about how great these players are, right? And I'm not taking anything away from the Edmonton Oilers as a team when we say really it's like just Calgary failing to do this one thing. But I mean, it's not like Edmonton is doing anything different that we haven't seen them do before. It's more that it's just working. And if the 2019 Chicago Blackhawks in the bubble can find a way to win, and if the LA Kings can find a way to 4-7, there's no reason why the Calgary Flames shouldn't be able to do the same thing. And
And not for nothing, it's not like Daryl Sutter hasn't been coach of one of like the most defensively sound teams in NHL history and like those 2010 LA Kings teams, you know what I mean? And so he's no stranger to having to shut down high-powered offenses. I mean, that team regularly ran into that Blackhawks, like every iteration of that Blackhawks roster, which boasted stars at that point, like Patrick Sharp still kind of sort of in his prime, Marian Hossa, and Patrick Kane. And they found ways to win. So I don't understand why Daryl Sutter is having such a hard time with a team that's maybe not as defensively sound as that LA Kings team was, you know, but is still significantly better defensively than they look, you know? Like this is a team that all year one of the big benefits with that, or one of the big positives we talked about, was their ability to defend and the quality of their goaltending. And I mean the quality of their goaltending's held up. Markstrom's looked good through this whole series, you know. Outside of the first game where neither goaltender really looked good, he's been all right. He's been good. He's been as advertised. He's been just as good as he was for them in the first round. It really just feels like his defense is consistently letting him down and giving up so many high quality chances to the most dangerous players in the world regularly, you know. It's one thing if they're having these breakdowns and they're giving up these chances to like Tyler Ennis, or which I don't even know if he's on the team. I don't think so. But, you know, guys like that, or like, you know, when they used to have Jujar Kara, guys, you know, somebody of that caliber, it's like, okay, yeah, you're giving up really high quality chances to guys who don't finish, but like you're giving up high quality chances regularly to Connor McDavid. Like you can't win games like that. You're not going to win games like that.
yeah, and like we would be singing a different tune if this series was like, oh, the Edmonton Oilers' depth is starting to step up, right? Like the Calgary Flames are finding ways to contain the first line, but the depth is stepping up, and it's like, all right, well, at that point, the Oilers, like as a team, are just finding ways to win games, but it's really just like this top line is doing pretty much whatever it wants whenever it steps on the rink. So yeah,
It has been completely unstoppable.
rough stuff. Do I feel good about Calgary? Not really. I feel worse about them than I did the start of the series. Obviously, it's not over. They could very well still win this series. I'm not saying they can't. But I probably would have bet money on the beginning of the series, and I wouldn't do that now. I'll just put it that way. I wouldn't bet money on
Yeah.
Edmonton either because they're the Oilers, and
Yeah, I'm in kind of a similar boat, right? Like, if they tie the series tonight, I'll feel better about Calgary in the long run, especially if they do it in a convincing fashion. But as of right now, yeah, this series is a total toss-up. I have no idea. Because like you said, it's Edmonton could come out and lay like an absolute egg, and Mike Smith could look like he's never played ice hockey before, and they just get shelled by Calgary. Or we could have Mike Smith look like he was a Vezina Trophy winning goaltender again, and it's like what? So there's just no consistency from night to night for the Edmonton Oilers. So I don't feel confident in them either. The only consistent thing, and I know I keep saying it, but like the only consistency in this whole series has been Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
So if Calgary can A, find a way to break that consistent stride of his, or B, somehow find a level of consistency of their own that'll overcome that. Because let's not, like you said, let's not be kidding ourselves. Like Edmonton as a team has not looked great through all these games. They've
No.
looked pretty much just good enough to win, you know, but they haven't been like, it hasn't been like, wow, okay, yeah, the Edmonton Oilers are just absolutely dominating. It's been like, oh wow, look, Connor McDavid is just absolutely dominating. He can do whatever he wants. Um, so yeah, if Calgary as a team can find a way to, if they can't slow down Connor McDavid, if they can still find a way to take advantage of the depth of the advantage they have in the quality of their roster, like I think Calgary is a much deeper team offensively than Edmonton is, and I don't think you'd argue with me on that one. But if they can find a way to leverage that depth into more consistent scoring, I think they'll have a shot. But until they can show me they can do that, either one of those things, I don't feel very confident in the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Game 4 tonight. Who knows?
Honestly, yeah, it's like who the fuck knows anymore.
I'll wrap up with this last series here: the Colorado Avalanche and the St. Louis Blues. Colorado up 3-1, a 3-2 win for them in overtime in Game 1, a 4-1 win for the Blues in Game 2, a 5-2 win for the Avs in Game 3, and a 6-3 win for the Avs in Game 4. Game 5 is on Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of controversy surrounding this series. Everything that's gone on with Nazem Kadri, David Perron somehow, some way, shape, or form getting away with a Superman cross-check to the back of Nazem Kadri as they literally left his feet and Superman dove at him to cross-check him in the back while he was already down.
And he just missed him with an elbow too. Like it was.
Yeah, like that, and then the Jordan Bennington thing where Bennington's throwing water bottles at people now. Uh,
I mean, I get Bennington being upset. Not the tangent, but I get him being upset. But why are you upset at Nazem Kadri? Why aren't you upset at your defenseman who hit him into you?
or even I get
Anyway,
him like being mad at Kadri because obviously he's going to be the target of your ire, but like we can't be throwing stuff at people now. Like it was an empty water bottle. Even if it hits Kadri, it's not going to hurt him. But like
it's
that,
just like the principle of it. It's like, bro, what are
right?
you
Yeah.
doing? Like, are we children?
Um,
I get it. We play a sport where like fighting is regularly encouraged on the ice, but like, so it's funny for us to be sitting here like, oh, sir, you can't be throwing water bottles at people. But like, just chuck knucks with them on the ice, bro. Like, it's not like I mean, you can't this season because you got shut down. But like, it's not. They're in the same division. It's not like you won't get a chance.
yeah,
Um,
and it's specifically just because it was like after the game, right? Like Kadri's in the middle of an interview and you're throwing shit at him. So like,
and
come on.
and the real quick point I want to make, I think it's a shame that that all the Colorado Avalanche success in this series and as good as they've been has been overshadowed by one incident in one game and all the retaliation that's come from that, you know? And I get it. That's what makes rivalries and that's what makes playoff hockey the best. And that's what, has created some of the most storied and remembered series of all time. But like, I feel like what's getting lost in all like the noise is the fact that like Colorado's looked really fucking good. Like they're really looking convincing right now in beating St. Louis, especially in the way that they have.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say, uh, it's a shame that Bennington got knocked out this series because he was really really playing well. Uh, but to that end, are there a couple of goals maybe Vili who still would like back? Sure, but I don't think he's let in enough bad goals to make a difference in the own totality of the series. Like maybe you would have lost game 3 4-2. instead of 5-2 if he wants one of those back, or maybe he would have lost Game 4 5-3 instead of 6-3. And really, Game 4, that score is not indicative of how that game went because Colorado went up big early and kind of just put it in cruise control after that. Like I think they were up like 3-0 or 4-0 at one point very early on, and kind of just threw it in neutral for the rest of the game. I will say, for like Colorado's been playing fantastically. The only thing that keeps me from being like, okay, I think that they're at this point my far and away Stanley Cup champion pick, is that they're not playing so well in a way that like we haven't seen before, right? Like they're scoring a ton of goals, but their defense is still not super tight. So I will say that, like, if a team can find a way to expose their defense, then I think that they'll still be in trouble. But at this point, I would definitely put them as my solid, probably tied for first among the teams left. I'd say right now my two top picks for who's left in a Stanley Cup contender category would be Colorado and Tampa. But, I mean, I guess my question to you is, like, do you, with everything that's gone on and all the nonsense and all the BS that's gone on, do you think St. Louis has it within that locker room to put it behind them and just play hockey? Because that end of that game 4, St. Louis lost that mental game so quickly. They went down big early and then completely unraveled and fell apart. And if you can't get that mental game back on track, you don't have a prayer against the Avalanche. So I guess, do you think that that St. Louis has the leadership in that locker room to get that mental game back on track? Or do you think that they're going to come out here and just be so laser focused on revenge that they're going to completely forget that there's a hockey game going on?
Honestly, as much as I hate to say it, I really do think like they're so hell bent on revenge, especially because of how the whole thing happened. And then the next game, Kadri comes out and scores a hat trick on them.
Yeah.
Um, I also think I'm more inclined to think that way because of who their coach is too. Like, let's not pretend that like Craig Berube was like the cleanest hockey player in the world, or the like a poster child for the NHL rule book. So you combine his reputation and as a player, and both the reputation he has as a coach too. I mean, like let's not kid ourselves. Like he has in the past sent guys like Patrick Maroon after other guys, not in a malicious way, but in a way that you would expect for things that are less than this. So I mean, between that and the fact that a guy like David Perron, who's traditionally pretty level-headed, would lose his cool in such a significant way, I really think like it's not even an indictment on their leadership. I just think like this has rattled them so hard and has really got them in a place where I don't know if they're going to be able to get over it right now. Um, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see if they can. I mean, they definitely have the leadership to do it. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly is one of the best two-way players in the game and is one of the better captains in the league. So, I mean, I'm sure he's definitely beating the drum and trying to get the team all pulling in the same direction. It's just really whether or not the other guys are willing to,
Listen.
follow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this does not feel like the same 3-1 deficit that the Rangers found themselves in, right? Um, the Rangers, when they were down 3-1, I was even saying in the group chat, like, I don't think that the Rangers really deserve to be down 3-1, and in fact, I think they pretty handedly outplayed the Penguins in most facets of the game through 4 games. So I still felt very confident in the Rangers going forward, even when they were down 3-1. But this is not the same situation. Like, St. Louis has not been dominating these games, and Colorado has not been getting by the skin of their teeth in these games. It very much feels like a 3-1 deficit that is earned, and if you give the Colorado Avalanche 3 games to win one of them, I think that they'll pull it off. Yeah.
And St. Louis hasn't really showed anything to tell me that like they're gonna pull this off. You know what I mean? Like the other games they've played have been, yeah, they haven't been all blowouts, but they haven't been the closest. Yeah, like you said, they in game 3 or was it game 4? They went up early. They went up big early and just cruised to the finish. Like if they're able to put themselves in a neutral and cruise to the finish line in a game against you in the playoffs, that's not a good sign. You know, like you're not making it hard enough on them. And St. Louis really hasn't. I mean, Colorado's been finding ways to score pretty much at will throughout this series. I don't think St. Louis has really had an answer for Colorado's power play. Even when it's not scoring, it's just so dangerous at generating opportunities and generating like offensive zone pressure that it's St. Louis just has no answer for. Like they have, yeah, that's really it. They just like have no answer for the power play or Colorado's speed and offensive game in general, really.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm feeling pretty much
Not
a wrap
great.
on this series. So
Yeah.
anything last minute you want to add before we wrap up this?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually. I wanted to talk about the St. Louis fans who have been harassing Nazem Kadri's wife on social media. Okay, one, that's fucking weird. Why his wife of all people, right? Like why not him? He has social media accounts, but that's like my tertiary like not even worried about reason for why this is a problem. But like two, okay, why go after I get you're mad about the play, right? But why would you get so mad you feel the need that you need to reach out to either A, the player or his significant others and then throw racial slurs and bigotry towards them? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why that is your accepted response to this. So, to you St. Louis fans that have engaged in any of this or have seen people engaging in this, like, I mean, this is the lowest of the low, right? I get that you're passionate. I get that you care, but this isn't passion. Like, this isn't being passionate about your team. This is just being a fucking asshole. You know, it's a play on the ice. It wasn't like Kaji went out there and fucking drop kicked Jordan Binnington in the face or anything egregious. You know, he made a hard play to the net. He got hit a little harder than he thought he was going to, and he went into the goaltender and he got hurt. It's unfortunate, and it sucks for it sucks for you guys, and it might have really put it like a neat capture season, but like it's hockey. It's a contact sport. It happens. You know, that doesn't give you the right to reach out and harass him or his family in any way, you know, regardless of whether, or not even regardless, but like it doesn't give you the right to do it at all. And it especially doesn't give you the right to harass them on a racial context or about its ethnic background, which has absolutely nothing to do with what happened on the ice. You know?
Yeah. It's if you're so hell bent on getting your anger out there, like if you want to tag a player in a post and be like, you're a scumbag on the ice, you did a dirty play on the ice, whatever, you're not a good player on the ice, like if you keep the context, and I'm not advocating for you to do this, right? Like
But if
don't
you feel like
harass
you have
people.
to, yeah.
Like I've done it when I was younger, right? I've done it when they tweet some stupid stuff, like when Brad Marchand tweets some dumb thing about like, oh, I had 3 rings, and I was like, yeah, but you still elbowed Ryan Miller right in the fucking head, so you're still a scumbag or something like that, right? Like we've all done that before, right? But like if you're hell bent on telling a player he sucks, tag him and just leave it to the context on the ice. Like leave his family, his wife out of it. Racial, ethnic, religious, all of that garbage has no place in hockey. It doesn't, right? It doesn't matter what race, religion, color, ethnic background, whatever cultural background, whatever you can bring into it, does not matter in the game of hockey. It should doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter in everything in
Life in
life.
general, yeah.
Yeah, but specifically in the game of hockey, like leave that crap out of it. It's trash. It's garbage. You're a terrible person if you attack somebody on that basis, and you're an even worse person if you attack somebody on that basis to their wife, who has literally nothing to do with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and to what these people's perceived argument would, I'm just passionate, I love my team. No, you don't. You don't. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to hide behind this and say like, "Oh, I'm just really passionate, I love my team." Because no, you don't. You're just an asshole. I love the Rangers, right? I fucking bleed New York Ranger blue. You know that, and you bleed Islander orange. Like we don't go out and just harass players when things happen. You know what I mean? I wasn't like DMing fucking um whoever's wife after he hit Tyler Mott in the regular season and injured him. Like, oh, you fucking piece of shit, fucking, blah. You know what I mean? Like, it's hockey. It happens. You know? I get being upset because, like, yeah, I'd be upset too if my goaltender just got ran over and we lost him for the playoffs. Like, I'd be pretty upset. But there's a difference between being upset and being,
A racist.
yeah, just like an asshole, like a racist asshole. Like, there's no reason for it. And I know we do a lot of shitting on, we shit on the NHLPA a lot on this podcast, not because, well, usually because they're on the wrong side of issues, but that's like a whole other thing. I do want to point out that, like, in this case, I want to give them some kudos that I feel are earned. They were very swift when, in, their condemnation and their support of Nazem Kadri in this whole situation. I think it was like his wife posted the tweet like either late last night or this morning, and then the NHLPA had like their statement like very shortly thereafter, like out there. So, kudos to them for being quick and really like. I know they can't do much really, but at least it's nice to know that they are involved or at least aware, and not just sticking their head in the sand like they have in the past for situations like this. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty sure the NHL put a statement out there too. I wouldn't be surprised. They've been pretty quick on things like this. So I mean, the kudos for the people in the positions to make a difference or say something on saying something. And yeah, racist St. Louis fans, you should all be ashamed of yourselves.
Also,
And
not for
if
nothing, like you're literally about to rage your way into a jail cell because the St. Louis Police Department is investigating this stuff. So like
yeah, like
even if you want to
it's not
take like
worth it.
the most selfish attitude about this and only think about yourself in this instance, which is obviously not the right way to handle this, but even if you want to take the most selfish stance about this, then you don't want to go to jail, do you? So stop being a fucking idiot. like
Yeah, pretty
uh,
much.
so
But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that briefly because I thought it was important.
yeah, stop being racist, stop being bigoted. It's just it has no place in the sport. It really doesn't. If you can play hockey, you can play hockey, and nothing else besides your talent level should matter. And the fact that we're still having this conversation in 2022 really pisses me off because we're better than that, or at
Which I
least
thought
we
we
should
should
be.
be. Yeah.
So, yeah. So again, as with last time, we're probably gonna wait until the other series wrap up, and then we'll do the round two wrap up whenever that happens. So next episode, maybe not next week, depending on how long things go. Although I think all the series will be done. Yeah, the series will definitely be done before the end of next week. So, yeah, whenever these series wrap up, we'll do our round two wrap up, and we'll be talking about the conference finals. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys again next time.